Some developers want Microsoft to drop mandatory support for Xbox Series S because apparently Xbox Series S is not powerful enough to support next-gen games. So should Microsoft do it? I think they should, but not yet. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So every once for a while we get some developers complaining about Xbox Series S. I guess that's nothing new, right? Xbox Series S is not the most powerful console, of course. Yes, it is a next-gen console with some next-gen features, next-gen GPU features, better CPU, etc. But looks like for some developers that's not enough. And as always, there's some people that support Xbox Series S, there's people that don't support it and they say that it's a console, it's actually a potato, not a console. There's developers that say that there's no problem with supporting Xbox Series S and next-gen games. I guess it all depends on the type of game they build, maybe it depends on the skill, the budget, you name it. So what about that mandatory support for Xbox Series S, and why did I say that they should drop support for it? Okay, so this will actually tie into like a bigger topic really, and I don't want to make this video too long, so hear me out. I really do think that Xbox Series S mandatory support should not be there, right? I mean, maybe not necessarily right now because you can't really tell me that Xbox Series S actually holds anything back when we haven't really got even any next-gen games really, right? Like what the hell are we talking about? Like we've been getting cross-gen titles for the last 2 years, like even Plague Tale or Gotham Knights. These are really last generation games. They just decided to not support a last gen consoles last minute, literally like a couple of months before the release of these consoles, because I guess they decided that they cannot be bothered with optimizing. And it looks like even these current gen consoles, they didn't really optimize that well, right? We're talking about like 30 frames per second games at 1440p, right? But so what about that support? I think that let's talk about generations, okay? So because this is very important. I think that generations should be a thing of the past, and that's actually not even my opinion. I actually I've heard even developers talking about it. Like there was this interview on Game on Daily podcast with Mike, I forgot his surname, and he did say that like generations actually are a thing of the past, right? And that's why I've been also covering on this channel many times that I was saying that yeah, we should actually be getting these console upgrades, and that's where the whole support for Xbox Series S comes in, right? I think that Microsoft should not really force developers to make any games for Xbox Series S or whatever, right? I mean, I understand their strategy right now, and maybe they shouldn't really do that right now. But I guess a year, 2 years from now, I think it will be like 4 years after launch of these consoles. So I think that it will be, developers should not be forced to support like a console if they don't feel like they want to optimize for it, right? And I think that market should really speak, because I think that everyone votes with their wallet. At the end of the day, if enough people will buy Xbox Series S, developers will support it anyway, because they will not want to lose consumers, of course, right? So that's one part of the story. So we're talking about like console upgrades, and I think that like I don't want to have a generations anymore. Like if you actually look what's going on right now, like it's been 2 years now and we still haven't received any next generation games. Because you can't tell me that Gotham Knights or like Plague Tale is a true next generation game. Not really. God of War, which is coming out very soon, another cross-gen title, right? But like we've been getting cross-gen titles for like last 2 years. So I mean, we can't really talk about next generation because we haven't received any games for these generations. And one of the reasons is like, it's all about like consumers. There's still a lot of people on these old consoles, but also to be able to really say that it's a next gen game, developers need to start using these next gen engines and next gen features, right? And that takes time, so developers have to get used to it, and hopefully next year that will change. But my point is that all this makes this generation probably very long. It will make it very long, and I don't want to wait for new consoles like 8 years. So right, so I think that like we should actually be what I want to see more like a mobile phones kind of model, a little bit maybe like PC, but more like a mobile. So there you get a phone which is totally fine, will run all the apps for like number of years, but there's some cutoff point where if you're still going to be using that phone, you are running at risk of some apps not being able to run on that phone. And I think that should actually happen to like these consoles, especially Xbox Series S, because like Xbox Series S is fine now, but I think that we are, and games will become very demanding like 3-4 years from now, right? And I think that Xbox Series S, despite the fact that it maybe will not hold anything back from like CPU perspective and anything like that, but maybe developers will want to implement ray tracing at its full force, and Xbox Series S won't be able to do that, right? So I see some scenarios where Xbox Series S will hold some of the games back, and I think at this point Microsoft should allow developers to just skip Xbox Series S. Because it's going to be like 4 or 5 years after the launch of the console. So back in the days, 4 years was like a whole generation, and by that time we would get another generation, right? So it's 4 or 5 years is more than enough for a console, I think. If you still want to use it and play older games, that's fine. Less demanding games, that's fine. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any support for that console anymore, but there should. But I think that if there's a developer that feels like, that console is holding me back, don't support it. And also remember that there's still cloud. So it's an interesting thing, because if you really think about it, even right now, there's games on cloud that actually run at 1080p 60 frames per second, no problem, right? Yes, there is a little bit of a lag, but if you've got internet decent enough, you're not really going to see much of a difference. So when you look at Xbox Series S right now, and Xbox Series S even right now runs some games below 1080p, sometimes at 30 frames per second, and then you've got cloud that supports 1080p 60 frames per second, and in the future that will actually get better, because Microsoft did say that they are actually thinking about like high resolutions in the future and stuff. So maybe 1440p, maybe 4K, who knows, right? So, but let's stick to 1080p for now. So it's funny, but in the future, these cloud games, these games streaming from cloud may actually look better and run better than a native Xbox Series S games, because the problem is that some developers, in order to support all these consoles, will say, okay, fuck it, well, let's just cut as much graphics as we can from Xbox Series S version, so we don't have to spend too much time optimizing and stuff, and you will get like bare bones game on Xbox. You may actually get a bare bones game on Xbox Series S in the future, and then you will get 720p, maybe 30, maybe 60 frames per second game with some graphics here and there. And then you will have a cloud-based game. That will run on Xbox Series X probably. at 1080p 60 frames per second, but that's not all. It will get better graphic settings. It will probably get maybe ray tracing. So not only game will run better frame rate wise, not only it will run at high resolution, but also graphics will be better. So I mean, what's the incentive to play on Xbox Series S at that point, right? So you may as well, obviously, if you've got a decent internet, you may as well just play via cloud and play other native games on Xbox Series S if they are not too demanding, right? So it all makes sense. And, you know, like, I think that would actually make everyone happy. And it's just like with Xbox One right now. I mean, at the end of the day, like Xbox One users, if they've got a good internet and stuff, they don't even have to upgrade because, yes, there's actually not many games, Xbox One games right now that are coming out. I mean, there's still a lot of them, but there's going to be less and less as we move forward. But at the end of the day, there's still that option to stream these games. So I think that this mandate shouldn't to support Xbox Series S by developers should not last too long. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that Microsoft will do it. I don't know what their strategy is. But I think at some point they will have to drop support for Xbox Series S because I don't really see a situation where Xbox Series S will be supported for like 8 years. I mean, by then, I will understand why developers are complaining. I mean, I don't really understand why they complain right now. I mean, I guess I understand why, because hey, it's another console to optimize for, and if you're not really using these next-gen features, actually, there's not actually a lot of memory there. I mean, yes, if they started using SFS, velocity architecture, and that kind of stuff, that would actually change the situation. But hey, we are in a situation that we are still in this cross-gen development, right? And they are using old ass engines to support last generation consoles still. So, it is what it is. Like at the end of the day, Xbox Series S has less memory than Xbox One X. That's a problem, right? So, I think that Microsoft, when they were creating Xbox Series S, they really thought that these next-gen game engines would kick in a little bit earlier and developers would actually start making proper next-gen games a bit earlier. But nobody could actually plan for COVID and other things that happened, like chip shortages and war and all these different weird things that are going on right now. And, the whole crypto, craziness and stuff, right? There's been a lot of things that was actually affecting electronics and access to chips and whatever, right? But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I think that developers should not be actually forced to anything, just like on PC. I mean, developers, when they make game on PC, they provide minimum recommended specs, and you can check if that particular game will actually be able to run on your PC. If you see that, oh shit, that minimum specs is actually a bit higher than my PC, I guess it's time to upgrade. And that should be the same on consoles. Why not? And really, the development of games on consoles and PC is not really that different these days, because same-ish kind of architecture really, and similar tools, especially on PC, and especially on Microsoft side with PC and Xbox, right? So anyway, guys, that's these are my thoughts on it. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks for support. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video on social media. That would actually help me and channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care.